Hi, welcome to another training video on the web application NetChecklist.com. In this video I'm going to talk about navigating within the application. Now in this example I've logged in as a fictitious user named Bob Broker, you can see up here on the right, and he is the manager of a fictitious real estate company called Ready Real Estate. And here you can see the screen that Bob sees when he first logs in, and on the right you can see the list of organizations that he is a member of. Now at this point Bob is logged into the application, but he's not working within any organization. So notice that you don't see a task list or any of the menu items to add tasks or checklists or projects or any of the other things that have to belong to organizations. Now, as we discussed in the introduction video, everything you create in this application must go into an organization with the sole exception of the user accounts. So you won't even see the menu items to work with any of those things until you actually go into an organization. Now, while you're on this page, you will still see a button where you can edit your user settings, and you can also, of course, log out here. But as soon as we do go into an organization, which we can do just by clicking on one of these buttons, now we see a title at the top of the page which shows the current organization that Bob is working in this case Ready Real Estate. And we also see several new menu buttons up here at the top. And these are the buttons that allow us to work with all of the things that have to belong to an organization. Now notice that now that we're working in an organization, there are sort of two different home buttons. There's this one here that says Ready Real Estate Home, and then there's a home button over here on the left. This one right here is what I call the organization homepage. It's the homepage for this organization, and it's the page that you're taken to whenever you first go into any organization. The home button over here takes us back out of this organization to the screen where we were when we first logged in, where we can select an organization to go into. So again, this is the organization homepage, the homepage for this organization, and this is the page where you do all of your work with your actual task list. And it's the only page where you can work with the actual task list. You can sort your task list in several different ways. You can filter your task list to show or not show different types of tasks, but no matter how you sort or filter your tasks, you will still be looking at them on this page. This is also the page where you can mark your tasks complete as well as do a few other things with them. Bob currently doesn't have any tasks, but if he did, they would be showing up right here in that section. So next, notice that two of these buttons up here on this main menu are actually split menu buttons. There's a button here, and beside it there's a link that opens up, there's a little down arrow that opens up some links below that. On both of these, clicking the main link does take you to an actual page. In this case, again, this is the page we're already on, the home button for this organization, or this one over here takes us to the main page where we work with checklists. And below this one are the single task items where you can add a new single task or where you can work with recurring single tasks. And aside this checklist button are several pages all having to do with checklists. Here we can copy a checklist to the task list, which is how we actually use a checklist. You can look at the checklist's copied page. You can work with recurring checklists, make a duplicate copy of a checklist, work with checklist branches, and of course create a new checklist or add a new item to a checklist. The next button on this main menu is the org setup button, and this is not a split menu button. It is only it only opens a drop down menu. Clicking the org setup button does not take you to a page. There is no org setup page. Under the org setup button, you'll see several other pages. Here you can work with your projects, you can manage organization users, you can work with task classes, jobs, and you can also edit the organization name. Now, I do want to point out here that we're only seeing some of these items because we are logged in as a user who's an owner of this organization, which is the highest level of user rights that a user can have within an organization. If we were logged in as a user who was anything less than an owner, then we would not see some of these items. For example, only an owner can change the organization name. Some of these other items may be able to be seen by administrators, but not by users who aren't administrators. in particular this whole org setup button, where you can and also where you can add users to and remove users from an organization, as well as change the user role of each member of your organization. You have to have a pretty high level of user rights to be able to do that. But of course, keep in mind that a user's permissions can vary from organization to organization. So just because you're not an administrator of one organization doesn't mean you're not an administrator of another organization. So let's go back to the home page, and again, on this Bob, this is where Bob will see his task list if he currently has any uncompleted tasks, as well as a couple of other buttons over here on the right. The task sort and filter button here opens an accordion menu where you can see all of your options for sorting and filtering. Clicking that opens it, and clicking it again closes it. At the top, we see our sorting options. There's currently 4 different ways you can sort your task list. Now, these will not affect what shows up in your list, only the order in which they show up. But below that, under the filtering tasks, these items will affect which tasks show up. Now, whenever you make changes, in order to commit those changes and make them take effect, you do have to click this Update Task Sorting and Filtering button. If you make changes and just close the accordion, then they will not take effect. You do have to click this button. And also, if no matter how many changes you make, at any time you can reset all of your filters to defaults by clicking this button here at the bottom. Below the sort and filter options is a button to copy a checklist to a task list. This also opens an accordion menu that contains the checklists that belong to this organization. It will actually take you to the same page where you'll go if you come up here and say copy checklist to task list. I'll go over in the video on copying checklists how this works slightly differently. But basically, when you do it this way, if you click the name of the checklist, when you get to the page to copy it, the checklist name is already selected for you. The third button on this page is the checklist copied button. That takes you to the checklist copied page, which is the same page that you go to if you come up here. I just find myself using that page pretty often, so I put a button here which is a little faster than coming up to the menu. So those are the buttons on the sidebar of the organization homepage. Next, let's go over to the checklist page where we also have some buttons on the side. First here you can create a new checklist, add a new item to a checklist, and then below it we see the checklists that belong to this organization, so we can click on one in order to edit it to either the checklist or the items that belong to it. And whenever you've got one selected, you see it shows up slightly darker over here on the sidebar, so you can tell at a glance which one is currently selected. Next, let's briefly go over to the projects page. That's under the org setup button, and go to projects. It works sort of the same way. We can add a new project, or we can click one of the existing projects to edit it. We can make it inactive, and again, it's slightly darker when it's selected so that you can tell which one is currently selected. The task classes page also works out pretty much the same way. I don't currently have any set up for this organization, but all these work in a very similar manner. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out here is that on most of these buttons I have added title tags. See the little pop-up box when I hover over that? And on most of these things, I've tried to do it on all of them, you can get a little more information about what a button does just by hovering over that. I've tried to use that pretty liberally throughout the whole application. So do keep in mind you can hover over things to maybe get a little bit more information about what something does. So whenever you're ready to leave an organization, you can click the home button to go out of that organization, or you can simply log out. And if you're going to log out, it's not necessary to leave an organization first. Logging out is going to take care of all of that for you. So the last thing I want you to understand about navigating within this application is that it's built on what's called a responsive design, which means that the layout of the page is going to change in response to the size of the screen that it's being displayed on. And the primary purpose of that is to make the application remain usable when it's displayed on smaller screens, mainly mobile phones. So the easiest way for me to illustrate this is I'm going to just start gradually making this screen smaller. There, it changed a little bit there, and right there, boom, we see a big change. Basically, this is when it gets down to a mobile phone screen size. And this menu is designed to make the application usable by touching the screen with your fingers on a mobile phone. So now, even though this screen looks different, we have not navigated to to another page. We're still on the same page that we were on before. And rather than spending a whole lot of time going over the details of how this other menu works, I'm going to do that in a separate video. That way you can watch that video only if you plan to use the application on devices that have smaller screens. So that's how we navigate within the application. Thanks for watching.